Hey everybody, it's Dr. Julie Quinn here, and I wanted to go over the end of week 3 and the beginning of week 4. So I've been getting some emails about the milestone 1 guidelines and rubric, this assignment that you're finishing in module 3. So if you're going through module 3, you've got some concerns about milestone 1 website or blog shell is a keyword there, and social media channels. So let's take a look at that and let's see what we see. Okay, so in this guidelines and rubric, so for the submission of this week, you're not expected to build the entirety of your website, whether it's like a static website or whether it's a blog site. You're expected to have the shell of that growing. All right, so you'll notice we've got some overview in the prompt. Select a website or blog building tool. Remember, this is not Facebook. This is not a social media channel, right? This is not your Instagram. That's separate. This is whether you're going to have a static landing space for your content that you then layer with your social media spaces or social media channels to drive readership onto that main page. So we're talking about a lot of the readings that you had for this week focused in week 3, focused on like WordPress, for example. But you could use Wix, you could use other websites, you could use Blogger for now. And remember, whatever you do at the end of the term, you don't have to stick with that in your professional life. This is just to get these, to plant these seeds for your presentation, you know, on the internet. And so interested readers can find more about you and they can connect with you, and that helps you promote your work, right? So for this assignment, for milestone 1, you will create that website or blog. So you will be on WordPress or you will be on Blogger or what have you. That includes a name and headline. And remember, we've been talking in the discussions and in the journal spaces about your brand and about how design reflects your interests. So if you're interested in sci-fi and you're interested in cyberpunk, you may have darker neon, rain-drenched, I'm really thinking of like Blade Runner here, but imagery where there's interesting bodily designs where it's hard to tell where the human line ends and the sort of mechanized element begins, that kind of thing. And if you're interested in romance, you could have romantic colors and, you know, and textures in your banner images and things like that, right? If you're writing in a nonfiction space, you may have a design you may have links that link your readers to other professional spaces. So if you're a nurse, if you're a doctor, if you're a physical therapist, you may have links to other organizations and things like that. So it's less about the feeling of a website. It's more about sort of establishing your ethos, your credibility. So design depends a lot on who's your audience and what do they want to see from you and what makes you, how do you, design is not more important than your writing for everyone, but it does make the spaces on the web more appealing. You want your readers to spend more time on your spaces. So at a minimum, you will have these pages on the shell. Your author biography, which we've already built, and it doesn't have to be long. Remember, these are things that you've already done, so you're not like reinventing the wheel here. You are utilizing sources that will make your website or blog functional. So for example, you may have a tab that says published works. Doesn't mean that the list has to be complete. Once I click on the tab, it could say list in progress or under construction. That's fine. But I see that you've got these features that you are growing or building. Okay. Use the resources within the tool and the design elements to make your blog engaging. So maybe if you've talked a lot about polls, you've got a little poll on the side, but it doesn't have to be perfect or complete. But I'm seeing that you're testing the waters. Okay. Now, you know, a lot of writers, modern writers do use social media tools. They use Twitter. They use, I'm not as familiar with writers that use Instagram. Maybe that's a little bit about with my age. I know like fitness influencers certainly do, and musicians and actors and actresses do. And I'm sure writers do that. But whatever social media tool you talked about in the prior discussions and journals, I want you to have that linked. And it doesn't have to be to your personal Twitter. It doesn't have to be to your, like, you don't have to have Twitter. You don't have to have 50 tweets, right? Or to a Facebook page or Pinterest or whatever social media tool you've decided to use. But have a link to one, even if once we click on that link, it's empty. It's in progress, but you're connecting these tools together. And that's what I'm looking for. Okay. So the second part of the assignment that's due tonight is, you're writing up like a synopsis. After creating the shell, create a document that includes the link to your website or blog so I can take a look at it, as well as a synopsis of your design decisions, right? The purpose and function of the platform, how the color, images, the choice of fonts, the different button options reflect your brand, and how your design decisions respond to audience needs, interests, and style preferences. So it's that shell that's beginning to be built out, and then it's a document discussion talking about some of your choices. That's what that assignment is about. Okay? So, just as a quick refresh reminder, now into Module 4. We're going to identify best practices for composing written content, and this is where my work as a former technical writer and editor really comes into play. You'll notice in module work for the second journal, I've gotten a little bit stricter with grammar and syntax, and here's the reason. It is so important when you submit your work to editors, when you submit, you're looking for agents, you're looking for a team of people to consider your work for publication if you're not going the self-publishing route, that your work looks professional. I can't tell you how quickly work goes into a slush pile if the work is not proofread at an academic business English standard. That's a fact of the matter, for technical writers and for writers in fiction. Now, it also depends on the genre that you're writing in. You know, it's different if you're writing a graphic novel than if you're writing historical fiction, right? And it's different if you're like Tolkien, you're creating an entire language for the work that you're doing. So of course, context and audience have a big handle in that. But if you're struggling with comma use and proper capitalization, the agents and the editors are, of course, editors help you refine a text. If you look at the writer Diana Gabaldon, who writes the Outlander series, and she does historical fiction, and you look at her first couple of books. I mean, the books are big, but then they get to be 1,000, like 1,100, 1,200 as the series goes on, and she has become quite popular, and so she's gained editorial control over her work. And with that, the editors at the publishing house have less control over her content. And so you get the descriptions of every single character injury and every single meal, such minutia that it becomes kind of hard to keep going, even though I found the first books wildly interesting, because there was some sort of editorial control. So once you gain popularity, you get more control over your content. But at the beginning of it, it's in the publishing house's predominant control once you sign a contract, right? So you have to be really careful about composing written content. And even though you're really good writers, you've made it this far, you have talent and you have persistence. But we've got to talk about best practices. Okay. So we're talking about content, but we're also talking about, what does a text look like? And readability is really important. Okay. So this is the module at a glance. Then we've got the overview, crafting content for your platform. So the assignments that are due in week 3 that's finishing up are about getting that platform set up, but it doesn't mean you have all of your content built yet. This week we're thinking about how do we start that process of loading your website, your blog, your website with content. And then of course using social media tools to drive readers to that content. Okay. So you can see this sort of overview discussion here. We've got the reading and the resources. Of course, you're going back to build your platform. We've got the do's and don'ts, building mistakes to avoid. So these are written from people who have this experience, take their experience into consideration. Doesn't mean it's law. We consider it. Blog post ideas for writers. So if you're stuck, we're going to help you get jump started. And of course, a lot of it sort of depends on the genre that you're writing in. So keep that in mind. So, and how to make blogging work as an author, sort of how to keep motivated and keep going. The worst thing is to see an author's website or post when content hasn't been updated in, a couple of months or years. You have to seem like you're invested for readers to want to stay on that page. So we've got the website, or blog best practices discussion. you're used to these discussions. You know the posts and all of that, so I don't have to go over this in that much detail. You've got the 4-2 journal entry. So now, at least in this class, you'll notice we're doing discussions and journal entries every week. You'll submit the second milestone of your project in week 5. The blog then includes the required pages and content. So we're spending this week thinking and building and drafting. This week is a really important week for you to reach out and work with me if you have questions, if you want to brainstorm. Let's see. For this assignment, you only need to provide a sketch, a list of ideas, or an outline of the content. Consider this the first step to completing milestone 2, in which you will write the content for each page. You will not receive feedback on this assignment before it's due unless you set up time. So the idea is that, think about Anne Lamott, and I don't know how many of you had access to the writer Anne Lamott, but I'll link it in the bottom of my announcement here. And she talked, it's an older text. It's from her book, Bird by Bird. And she talks about shitty first drafts. Okay. And it's really funny. And she used to be a writer for, and she's a very successful writer. And she used to be a writer for a magazine, and she did food reviews. So she'd go to restaurants and do these reviews. And she talked about the stress of the drafting process and how she was worried that she couldn't keep her job and she would fail and everyone would laugh at her. But she got into her brain that she just had to write something down that was pretty shitty. Excuse my language. Because of, that she just had to do something, had to write anything down, get it out of her head. That's what you're doing this week. So when you're working on these ideas, I'm not going to see everything unless you want to work with me, and I'm open to working with you. So you just got to send me an email and we'll schedule a time that works, with both of our schedules. But remember, getting something down and then refining it and then putting the refined content on your blog is going to make your work look more professional. It's going to appeal to your audience. This assignment should be 500 words, about approximately 1 3/4 to 2 pages when it's formatted in MLA style, double-spaced content. And then you can, of course, always click on those journal guidelines. These are the contracts that we promise we will grade you by. And of course, you're going to be talking about all of your ideas. This is a brainstorming opportunity, for you to just really sort of engage, in the drafting process. And drafts doesn't mean fully realized drafts. It means sometimes notes and things like that. So just remember, you are finishing, the, milestone 1, the website or blog shell and channel. So, we are working on this. This is due tonight. And then you've got module 4, that is popping up. And then we're already almost halfway there. Listen, if you've made it this far, you're going to make it through. Just remember, everything that you prepare is in hope for, is a wish that you are fulfilling right now. But if you end up not liking it and you want to change platforms, you want to change social media channels, you still have that ability. You're not 100% wedded, but you've got to try these tools to sort of see how to establish your foothold on the internet so readers can find you. And the longer you're there and the more that you have, the more time hopefully they spend within your spaces on the web. So that's that for this reminder discussion of finishing module 3 and starting module 4. I'm excited to see your work, and just reach out if you have any questions.